Hey, it's Tpok. I'm back in true remembrance. We left off with La getting kidnapped, so suddenly a line from a book I'd once read flashed into my mind. Something about idiocy, claptrap, and hysterical folly, roughly in that order. But I also realized with dawning horror that it was just like La to do something like this. She's such a good girl. I love her in my own way. I consider her my friend. That's why I'm coming with you, whether you like it or not. Very well. Not like you'd take no for an answer anyway. Let's get going. Even if the group tries to contact us, they won't come here to do it. You have a telephone at your place? No. I don't find it necessary. Fair enough. Not many people in town had telephones. And the reason for that was simple enough. Many of our guests had an extreme aversion to them, and their incessant ringing. Then we'd better head to Aroma. I agree. If they decide to get in touch with us, it'll be there. There was no point in searching around blindly. That would hurt more than it would help. So for now we were going to have to wait. I knew that intellectually, but still emotionally this was hard to take. Every moment we sat still was another moment La was in a hostile party's hands. My fears, however, were unfounded. Rook was waiting for us by the time we got to Aroma. There had already been contact. They want you to bring the list to the old church on 5th, in 1 hour sharp. Now, would you mind telling me what the hell is going on here? And that's exactly what I did. Rook was more correct than he knew. This was hell, all right. I told him everything about the gun, the list, La's kidnapping, and how Lips was a member of the terrorist cell. Rook was completely blown away. You're really with them? No freaking kidding? No kidding. Although it seems I've become a traitor. I was startled to watch the way Rook was studying Lips now. He wasn't just staring at her the way he usually ogled beautiful young women. No, this was a hard, emotionless glare. He saved it for rivals and enemies, like me, sometimes. But I had no time for any of this today. I left Aroma with the Lips hot on my heels. Rook looked like he wanted to come with us, but eventually I had him stay put. Now, it was true that someone had to stay behind just in case there was any further contact, but still, I knew that I was dealing him a harsh hand here. It had started snowing by the time we made it to the trolley station. Neither of us had umbrellas. Our heads were dusted with snow. We didn't care. Lips kept pace at my side. Her eyes were straightforward. Her entire body was quivering with tension. And yet, she seemed far more at home within herself now than the first time I'd met her. Tell me, how come you're not asking me about the leader of the cell? Because I know who he is. I saw him myself. He's a high-ranking professor of Mnemonicidology. Never had a class with him, though. Right. That's right, the man I saw coming out of the apartment on 5th Street. There was no mistaking him. Everyone in my class during training days knew who he was. A figure like that would have access to every last operational file HQ had to offer. No wonder nobody had been able to bring these terrorists to justice. And do you want to know what our goals are? Not at all. I told you before, you're free to do as you please in this town. But if you lay so much as a finger on my guest, and that's exactly what happened, then there will be hell to pay. Lips looked up at me in silence for a time. Then finally she spoke, in a voice as cold as steel. She's probably safe. He's not as horrible as you're making him out to be. Not as horrible enough to hurt La, but just horrible enough to explode bombs on innocent people, eh? My, I was so impressed by his compassion. Lips saw the look on my face and smiled painfully. Very well. I see there will be no convincing you, so I'll just tell you. Whether you believe me or not, that's up to you. She looked up at the snow-laden clouds, as if this were to be the last time her eyes would see them. And then she started to talk. Total emancipation. They want to break down the bureaucracy. It clearly doesn't work. Mnemonicide should serve anywhere and everywhere, not just in this isolated location. That's not doing us any favors at all. They constructed this town precisely because it was dangerous for mnemonicides out in the real world. And a mnemonicide's powers and his control over them were incredibly unstable things, and on top of that, most people hadn't even heard of us. If people knew, then we were going to have a bloody uprising on our hands nationwide. Perhaps, but according to him, he wants to make sure mnemonicides have power, enough power to help the weak. The weak? How arrogant. I suppose his goal is to create a new trade network of mnemonicides, and profit until he's filthy rich. I wonder. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps not. Lips shook her head then, in a futile attempt to shake off the demons in her heart. There was nothing but confusion and anger and loss in her eyes. I met him during one of our standardized patient encounters. I was just a student there, and he taught me so well. Speaking of which, tell me, how many years did you graduate in? 2. The Genius Accelerated course. Somehow I'm not surprised, but you'll excuse me if I'm a little envious. It took me 7 years. In other words, I've been here for far longer than you have. Lips laughed, her voice filled with self-derision. Obviously she knew this wasn't something you boasted about. I entered the academy when I was 12. 12. Can you imagine that? I didn't know anything about Mnemonicide, the world, anything. And on top of that, I was a dunce. No one liked me, no one helped me along. I was so lonely. But he was the one. He was the one who came and held my hand. He was the one who told me that it was okay, that I'd turn out fine. You're in love with him? Yeah. Or was. Right now I have no idea. I don't know if I really was in love with him, or if I was just lonely and willing to accept any companionship that came my way. She kept talking as if by doing so she'd be able to extract the purest darkness of her heart from the very words that fell from her mouth. Who was she conversing with now? Who was she listening to? Certainly not me. These are all things I've really come to hate about myself, but I think it may be too late for me now. Would someone like you have any idea of how that feels? Probably not. No, I understand. A little. Oh, Lip said with a surprise. Then she smiled. Oh, good heavens. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How come I can't be honest with myself, even in one little thing? So that's why you left the list at Aroma? That was your attempt to try and stop the cell from doing anything more, is that right? That's right. I didn't have the courage to send it to HQ, but I was hoping if I got to know the owner of Aroma and accidentally left the list lying around, he would pick it up and take the appropriate steps. And I was pleasantly surprised too. He's a really nice guy. And I've caused him so much trouble now too. Now I was glad Rook wasn't here. Had he heard any of this, I'd think he had spiraled into an uncontrollable depression. Or into an uncontrollable rage. Either way, something uncontrollable and bad. It would have been much better had she just been open and honest with us from the very beginning. And the final nail on the coffin is, my powers are dying. Back in the old days, I used to be able to pick up on people's thoughts a lot more easily. But nowadays, I can't even catch a glimpse. You get kicked out of town if you're not on a Mnemonicide anymore, right? That's why I wanted to put an end to this before I got deported. I see. I nodded. I had no idea whether it was a good idea to tell her what I was about to tell her. But she looked so sad and so alone at that moment that I didn't really have a choice in the matter. A Mnemonicide's powers will inevitably fade when he is filled to capacity. What? Or at least that's what the textbooks say. Lips smiled ambiguously at this. Burnout. The signs were obvious. She was very close. If she remained in this in this state for much longer, she was in danger of losing her powers permanently. In some ways, this was the happiest thing that could happen to her, or any Mnemonicide. Wow, okay. This story is getting so deep, I have no idea it could get this deep. They were waiting for us at the old church on 5th, the professor and 2 others. La was lying motionless on one of the church benches. No need to worry now, son, I've just drugged her, that's all. She hasn't been hurt, the professor said with a smile as he ruffled La's hair. La shuddered a bit, and then was still again. Have you brought the list? I took the envelope out of my pocket. I opened it up and unfolded the piece of paper and showed it to him. Good. Now, hand it over to Lips and send her over here. Lips jumped in surprise. She stared hard at the professor and then finally nodded. She'd decided at last. So she took the envelope and walked slowly to the professor's side. Her eyes, her face, her body, there was bitterness oozing out of every pore as she approached her lover. She handed the envelope over to him and rushed directly to La's side. But the moment she knelt to examine La, one of the men pulled out a gun and held it to her head. Lips felt the ring of cold steel and turned to the professor. What are you doing? That isn't something a traitor has the right to know, lass. He turned to me, bringing up his arm up to aim a gun at me. But I was faster. Mine was already pointed at him. Oh, snap. He stared at me as if he'd seen a ghost. Obviously, he hadn't expected this. And? Are you going to shoot? Are you going to try and kill me? That's my line, thank you very much. This isn't your lucky day. All I want is for my guest to be safe, and you happen to be in the way. The professor's mouth fell open. He stared at me in total disbelief. He couldn't tear his eyes away no matter how hard he tried. He started trembling. Cold sweat started running down his face. He grew paler and paler, looked cold. I simply stared back at him, with a look that froze him to the spot. When I was younger, I was considered a crack shot with these. If this were a gunfight, you'd have no chance. My index finger tightened on the trigger. The professor gulped loudly. His eyes rolled upward, and then all consciousness and light faded from him. But you don't even deserve that. He crashed to the ground. I fired a shot into Lips' captor's legs without a moment's hesitation. The man doubled over. Lips sprung into action, jarring the man behind her off balance, stripping him of his gun and throwing him. And while it was still in the air, she brought up a knee and a binding strike right to his chin. Good night. He wasn't going to be seeing anything for a very long time. Impressive. Most impressive. So you can take care of yourself. This is nothing much. But that's not important right now. She pocketed the gun she'd taken from her assailant, gave him another kick for good measure as he flopped on the ground, then turned to look at the fallen professor. Just a short bolus of amnesia. He'll recover soon enough. You're a dangerous man, you know, and your powers are even more so. That's precisely why. She nodded, so she finally understood. Tears were streaming down her face. I didn't know if it was because she realized that she'd sold her lover out, or if it was because she felt some pity for him in his prostration. Not procrastination. I didn't know, and I didn't care either, because she stopped crying soon thereafter, and she never cried again. Dang, Blackiris. And Lips. Newfound respect for Lips. La woke up in due course, and then we started heading home. A cleanup team from HQ would be here soon enough. Rook had taken care of that, at least, I presumed. Oh, wow, how embarrassing. I didn't want to cry. Were you watching? Lips said as she rubbed her red-rimmed eyes. For once, La was walking a little bit behind me. She probably didn't feel so well right now. No, I wasn't. Which means I was, of course. Lips nodded a little crossly. A little while later she nodded again, came close indeed, and kissed me on the cheek. I happened to be looking sidelong at La at that moment, and I was amused to watch her eyes snap open as big as saucers. Be a good boy and forget me, please. Aha. So this is why she called herself Lips. I nodded and smiled. La took offense to this and went running past me as far as her little feet could take her. Lips stuck her tongue out at me. Obviously she was trying to taunt me, so I was in big trouble now, eh? I merely sighed and said to her, I'm sorry, but that doesn't work on me. Although I think it might be better if we both forget this little experience. I agree. I saw the new light in her eyes. At last she finally understood. It was okay for her to be free of that man's shadow. If you like, there's a much better man I know who'd love to meet you. Although he's a pretty big rascal if you ask me. I'm looking forward to it. She smiled at me mysteriously, then looked up at the sky. The snow drifted down from low-hanging clouds onto her hair and her cheeks and melted away. La remained silent the entire time, even after we parted with Lips and were well on our way home to 8th Street. I was getting a little concerned at this point, so I said to her, Hey, La, are you mad? La stopped in her tracks. She turned to me, shook her head, and bit her lip. She was holding something in, but what that something was, I had no clue. No, not mad at all. Not mad at all. Her voice grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared. Her eyes, too, looked lower and lower until they were busy studying her shoes. Snow covered her hair and her shoulders. It brushed past her pale cheeks. She looked cold and alone and lost. Not mad at all, but don't know what's what anymore. She put her hands on her heart as if there was something massive and painful throbbing away inside her little chest. And then I remembered something I'd been wanting to say to her for a very long time now. La, that was very dangerous what you did. You could have been injured or killed had things not gone your way. I know, but still, I thought I could escape. I didn't expect them to drug me. That's not what I'm talking about. As my voice echoed off the frozen wasteland of a street we called our neighborhood, I finally realized I was the one who was mad, not her. I was so worried. I'm so glad that you are all right. I really am. I'm sorry, Blackiris. I'm so sorry. Oh, don't cry now, okay? If they find out that I made my guest cry, I'm sure they're going to do something really bad to me. La smiled then, and slowly began wiping the tears from her face. I let out a sigh of relief. Let's go home and relax, okay? I'm totally exhausted. How about you? Me too. I'll cook up a nice dinner for you. You deserve it. I'd love that. Wait a second. Right now our place looks like a bomb went off in it. Oh, for crying out loud, I'd totally forgotten about that. It was gonna take us all night for us to clean up that mess. But that was okay. La was going to be at my side. We'd get through it. Although I would have preferred to eat her undoubtedly delicious dinner and go to sleep forever. To be continued. So there's another act coming up. That's perfect timing. Perfect timing. Unless it ended. Okay, there is another act. Good girls say goodbye with a smile. Well, we'll start chapter 5 next time. So, thanks for watching, and Blackiris or La has caught a cold, so we'll find out. Thanks for watching.